Maybe I'll.
All
Okay.
right, guys. So we got another episode of No More Nonversations. And I've got Farah Mitha here, and she's got her Fireflies listening in as well. And I'm excited to learn a lot about her and her organization and her activities because I tried to do some research on the Fireflies, but you have to be a member. So,
Well, I mean, not necessarily. It's because it's in the beginning stages. That's why. Like, everything hasn't been officially released. So it's maybe hard to research at this point.
okay, no worries. No worries at all. And we will get into that in a minute. First thing I want to start out with was how has your Friday been so far?
Today's been a busy Friday. I woke up, I taught a yoga class, I came home, had breakfast, got ready. I just got back from a performance actually at the Westfield Mall in Culver City, which is why I didn't do my Firefly TV episode today like I usually do. I've only skipped it on days where I've been performing. So it's kind of cool that we get to show the Fireflies this today.
Okay, very
And now
cool.
I'm here. I was
All
stuck in
right.
a bit of traffic. As you said, everything's back to normal.
Everything's back to normal in LA, and that mall you referenced, I actually know that mall is Fox Hills Mall. That's how far I go back.
Yeah, everybody keeps telling me that it's referred to as Fox Hills, and I guess I need to get on board and start calling it Fox Hills.
Progression and all of that and futurization. All right, but I really have so much information going on, and I want to know as much as I possibly can in the short amount of time. So the first question I want to ask you is that if you could only pick one of these two artists to listen to for the rest of your life, would you pick Whitney or Aretha?
Whitney.
Why?
So, can I show you something?
Of course, yes. What?
What a great first question, by the way, because I just got this like a week ago. I ordered it a while ago, but I just got it. And I'm so excited about it. It's so cool. I don't know if you can see how it's made.
Yeah, yeah. That's nice.
But that probably should answer the question. Now, why? Let's just put her right here.
That's a dope picture, by the way. Super dope.
Yeah, I love all the shadows and everything. I definitely grew up more in the Whitney era than I did the Aretha era. And I know that Aretha definitely influenced Whitney and so many other of my favorite artists. There's just this magic about Whitney that, I'm not saying that Aretha doesn't have it, but there's something where like my soul just connects to Whitney. Like as soon as I got that poster and I had it in front of my bed, I would wake up every morning and be like, hi, Whitney. Hi, good night, good morning. And it's so funny because when you watch her on stage, and despite everything that was going on in her personal life, but when you watch her on stage, when you watch her perform, she's just mesmerizing. There's just this magic. And obviously Aretha's amazing and she has a similar magic, but there's something where my soul just connects to Whitney. And I definitely use her to center myself before I perform, before I sing, especially before I sing any Whitney song. I go, all right, Whitney, come through me, come through me. Let me channel my inner Whitney. So I think if I were to have to listen to between those two artists, one of them for the rest of my life, it would definitely be Whitney. And I think I'd be a much better performer for it. Not to say that I wouldn't learn so much from Aretha, because again, I know Whitney looked up so much to Aretha too. So like it's that, but yeah, I'm gonna have to say Whitney.
Okay, no, I completely agree. I mean, they are both powerhouse singers, but there's something about Whitney that is almost effortless when she sings, hitting all of these crazy high notes. And if you had your eyes closed, you would think that she was putting a lot of effort into like these notes that she's hitting into her performance. And then you open your eyes and it looks like she's just reading a book calmly at home.
She's also a very talented actress. Like I'm sure I'm sure everybody's seen The Bodyguard, right?
It's been a
I must have
while.
watched the movie like 100 times. And so when especially from that soundtrack, when I imagine her singing those songs, I can see her in the movies, or like Waiting to Exhale, or the other movies she was in. And she was just stunningly beautiful on the outside, and she was a good person despite everything she was going through. Obviously, I didn't know her, but you could see from some of the things that she said and things that she cared about. She was a good person. So I maybe it's really because I grew up more in the Whitney era, but yeah.
I agree.
Magical. And that anthem she did at the Super Bowl, like, are you kidding me? In tracksuits and a headband, in a tracksuit and a headband,
Yeah.
Like every other artist goes out there, gets like $100,000 outfit, if not like more than one, and they're like this huge spectacle, and she is like you said, effortless.
She is. She's effortless.
Effortless magic.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that performance. So I did get to read a little bit on your bio, and it looks like your parents were maybe attempting to persuade you to go the science, technology, engineering, math route, but it's not what you wanted to do, and then you decided to jump tracks and pursue arts. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I grew up in Ottawa, Canada. I didn't grow up in LA or even in Toronto, in any sort of major arts hub where there was a lot of accessibility to the creative arts anyway. Not that there wasn't any, of course there was. And my parents definitely fostered my creative side. I did go to drama camp, and I was allowed to be in choir at our mosque and also in school. It just so I would say from when I was young up until the end of high school, it just wasn't encouraged, and I also didn't push for it because I didn't know that I could. So I sang in choirs all through, I think from when I was 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old, I was in choirs. And then when I was about 14, so I was just starting high school, and I was friends with these guys who were just starting university in Ottawa, and they would jam every weekend. So I was friends with one of them. He brought me, and they would all just sit around with a bunch of guitars and some drinks and whatever, and they would just sing and play for like 7 hours. Like that was their weekend. And I noticed that I had so much more fun doing that every weekend than trying to go to parties or anything like that. Because my week was full with school, with sports, with volunteering, with everything. So this was the one time in my week where I felt, even when I wasn't singing, because at first I was so shy. So I wouldn't even dare sing around these people, right? I was just like watching in the corner. And then slowly, I got more comfortable to sing. And then slowly, we started doing like little coffee houses here and there. And it wasn't until I was about 16 or 17, we did a coffee house. And this one lady that was organizing it, I was actually at our mosque, and she was like, do you not want to do this professionally or like more than just a hobby? And I'm like, of course I do, but like, that's not realistic. And she's like, why not? And I was like, well, I don't even remember my answer, but she was the first one who put it in my head, is like, well, maybe you can do it. And so that thought sort of went in, but it also just went out, because I was very passionate about sports and about school. So for me, I really could have played professional soccer if I'd put my all into it, or done the total academic route, or done music. But again, I didn't really have anybody around me that was encouraging or supporting this music idea. So it wasn't something that I was pushing for myself either. I think I snuck out once to audition for a Much Music. What was it called again? Every Friday night they had this thing. Anyways, there was an audition a couple of my friends and I, we went to be a dancer on one of these Much Music shows. But that was about the extent of what I did aside from being in all these choirs. So then I decided to choose the academic route and go to medical school. That was my goal. my guidance counselor in high school was like, well, why don't you do physical therapy first? Because it's a professional degree. Right now, Queen's University offers it as an undergrad. It's their last year, they're going to be offering it as an undergrad. And then it's going to go to a master's program. And you can have a professional degree in 4 years, and then you can decide if you want to go to med school or not. You'll be able to pay your way through med school. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I took her advice, went to Queen's, started doing physical therapy and then applying to med schools. And, you know, by the time I graduated, they offered us a 1-year master's equivalent. I'm like, okay, fine. If I ever want to go to the States and do PT, then I'm going to need my master's. So let me do that. So now I'm in college for 5 years. We call it university for 5 years. And I'm applying to med schools, doing all my prerequisites, studying all summer for MCATs. And I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy it, because I love and I'm very passionate about medical sciences and about rehabilitation and physiology and anatomy and all that stuff. So it's not that I didn't enjoy it. It's that it wasn't my calling. You know, I graduated when I was 22 from PT, and I was making really good money right off the bat. Like, for a 22-year-old and with a professional degree, I was one of the youngest PTs in the country, and I was making really good money, but I would go to work every day and I was exhausted. I was complaining. I was just not happy. And I didn't even realize why until my brother came to visit me one day, and he was like, you complain a lot. And I was like, really? This is just not my personality. But he was so blunt. And which, you know, in that time was fortunate, because it made me look back and say, why am I being so complaining? Because I was miserable. I was miserable. Then my birthday came around and everybody's like, what do you want for your birthday? I'm like, I want a way into the music industry. Somebody please help me. And then I went to a med school interview in London, UK. And I was sitting in that interview, and the woman loved me. She was like, you already have patient experience. You're clearly passionate about this and intelligent. I think you'll fit in well. I had family in London, so it wasn't like a crazy move or anything. And she was like, I think you'll be a really good fit. So the interview went very well. And then I step out of it. My cousin was picking me up, and my heart just sank. I walked out of a very successful medical school interview, and my heart sank. And I told myself that if I don't get in, I'm going to pursue music. I'm just going to try. I'm like, I didn't know how long I was going to give myself. I was like, let me just go down that road, see where it takes me. I can always go back and try for medical school if I really want to. Or I can just be a PT if I really want to. I can buy some clinics, whatever it is. And I get in my cousin's car, and he was like, why do you look sad? And I was like, I'm praying that I don't get in. Because I knew that if I did get in, you don't grow up in a South Asian family and say no to med school, especially if you get in. So I was like, that's going to be my only way out, is if I don't get in. And so I was praying that I don't get in. I don't know who does that, who goes through the kind of effort that I went through. God, I had like no life. I would work maybe 60 hours a week and study the rest of the time. Or I was like, prior to that, I was in school however many hours a week, and I was just always studying. I barely had a life. So after all that, to sit and pray that I don't get in after all that work was, you know, a little ludicrous, but it led me here. So that's the story. That's the real story.
Wow. Okay. So I heard a number of things. I think I heard you say that you also had the opportunity to play professional soccer.
So I never took it that far. I started playing soccer when I was 7.
Okay.
And I was not the best player ever, but I was definitely one of the most well-rounded players. Like, so I was the one that the coach could always put from defense to forward to midfield. I had pretty decent endurance. And I had a really good sense of where the ball was going. So I was actually a pretty good defender. And left midfielder. And I was gonna try out for the varsity team. Well, so varsity for us, I guess, was first year university. I was gonna try out for the college team, the university team. And I had to make a choice, because the PT program was very competitive to get into, and you only had 1 year of prerequisites before you could apply to it. And because I had to get in that year, otherwise I wouldn't be able to do it, because it was the last year they were offering it as an undergrad. So I knew that if I had played soccer, I wouldn't have been able to study enough or volunteer enough to be able to get into the PT program. And I had to think logically, I probably could have made the team, especially if I'd tried out as a defender. But was my goal to play national soccer forever? No, it was, I just wasn't passionate enough about it. So I chose school and I did that.
That's impressive, because what I'm hearing here is you are talented in multiple areas. So I'm really curious as to your decision to pursue a singing career. So I want to know, because I think you may have hinted, I don't think you may have said it, but you might be an empath. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to touch on that a little bit too. So I want to know that decision to pursue a career in singing, in music rather. Do you think that was more of an intellectual decision? Was it an intuitive decision, or was it just a gut feeling?
All of the above, I think. And I really shouldn't even describe it as I wanted to pursue a career in music, because it was so much more than that. And that's what it took a long time for my family to even wrap their heads around. And I take the blame for that, because I don't always explain it so well. But from when I was young, like I would say my idols were, it's a weird combination, but my idols were Michael Jackson, Oprah, and Princess Diana. All three of them, for some reason, were very influential to me. And it's because, I would listen to Michael's music, especially songs like Heal the World, Man in the Mirror, Earth Song, all these beautiful songs that he made positive messaging cool, and so people would listen to him. They would place his songs in movies. And I was like, that's like the most efficient way to help people and to heal people. And yeah, going to med school, being a doctor, you could help thousands of people over the course of your life. But if you're able to get this platform of millions of people, and you could write a song or sing a song that can penetrate their brains and create all this positive energy, that just seemed a much more efficient route to helping people and making a difference in the world. Same thing with Oprah. She had her talk show, she got her platform, then she leveraged it to share all this spiritual information, all this positive information. Whenever I've had doubts or insecurities, which is like all the time, I'll pull up some Oprah quotes or YouTube videos, not just her, obviously, but she uses her platform for good. And Michael used his platform for good. And then there's Princess Diana, who was, if you see all the aftermath of everything and you see what was really going through her mind, is that she was in a, unhappy marriage and in a very confining role. And she decided that she was going to use her platform, use her power for spreading awareness about things that we wouldn't necessarily, like people weren't paying attention to or weren't taking seriously. And so somehow my brain put those pieces together, that the most efficient route to helping people is to create that platform. Now, how do you create that platform? What's your vehicle? Is whatever you're most passionate about, what your talent is. So for me, I was most passionate about singing and songwriting. I was so fascinated by it. And I just loved doing it. I could get lost in it. And so I kind of saw that as my route. So it wasn't just about music. Music was the vehicle. Music is the vehicle, I should say. Music and art is the vehicle. I see so much more. But the ultimate goal that I see now as it's developing was Firefly World. That was really the ultimate goal from when I was like 14 or 15 or 16. I just didn't know, and I still don't always know, how to put it together and build the blocks. But it's been in the making for that long.
Okay, that's really interesting. And I think what you're doing though is how it's supposed to be done, is you take steps first. You don't have to see the entire plan. You don't have to have that before taking a couple steps, and you just kind of create it as you go along.
I will tell you though, I have been envious for a long time of people who have had it figured out. I dated this guy when I was in like second year university, and he had his whole life planned out. He knew he was going to med school. He had just gotten into med school. He knew where he wanted to live, what hospital he wanted to work at. Him and his parents had already bought a plot of land to build the house, the wing where his parents were also going. Like, he knew where his kids wanted to, like, where he wanted his kids to go to school. He had it all planned out, and he's living that life from when he was 20. It was like boom, 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 so focused, so linear. Or even music artists, that they have one genre that they love, or one style, and they just like can go. I call it vertical progression as opposed to lateral progression. My life has been very laterally productive or laterally progressive, not as much vertically. I'm trying to make it more vertical now, if that makes any sense. But those are two examples of people that have had vertical progression because they're so focused. And so I've been very envious of people that knew what they wanted, and then you just take the steps to get there. However long it takes, you don't know, but you just do it. My life has been a little bit more zigzaggy and lateral. So yeah, lots of passions, lots of interests, lots of talents, lots of time spent in developing different aspects. So now Firefly World is about bringing all that together and I'm hoping that somehow it'll make sense one day. Somehow.
Okay. No, I definitely want to get into Firefly in depth here in a second, but there are so many questions that are coming right now. So like, because I don't know, honestly, I don't think I know anyone who knew exactly what their life was going to be like from start to finish. So this guy that you're describing, it sounds like probably something that happens more frequently than I'm aware of, but he knew what the plan was down to the T. They knew that he was going to pursue a medical career, build a house on this plot of land. It's going to look like this, and parents are going to stay over here.
Scares the crap out of me.
Yeah, that does sound like it'd be a little scary.
Like, whoa, it was too much. I think maybe it happens a lot in the South Asian community because, I'm going to speak for my parents. My parents grew up in East Africa, in little villages outside of Nairobi. And, they went to elementary school. My mom didn't even get a chance to finish high school, and neither of them went to college. And they grew up in pretty impoverished conditions. And so what they've built of themselves now, and this is the story of a lot of immigrant families that have come over. Some of them were, wealthy before, generations before, but, your parents come into where you're born, they migrate, and they've struggled so much, and they want better for you. So now they've worked their butts off to give you access to the kind of education they never had access to. So they're going to want you to follow routes that are more stable, because why in their, I can totally see their point of view. It's like, why in their minds would you follow something that might be unstable when now we're giving you the opportunity to follow something stable, which at the time was medicine, engineering, or law, right? So you'll often hear in South Asian families, medicine, engineering, or law. You pick one of those three, you're set, you're stable, and we're proud of you. So it's like, so I think maybe you see it more in South Asian families, where the kids have it more set as to what they want to do. Because I actually know a lot of people, but if I do think back, most of them are South Asian.
Okay.
Or maybe other ethnicities in business,
Right.
So there's that bias, and I think that's the backstory of it, or maybe it's part of the backstory of it. Because if you're told something as a kid, or if your parents were doctors even, or they really wanted you to be something, it's all that subconscious programming from when you're growing up, right? So it can influence that linear path.
Okay, so that's really fascinating to me. So I have two questions to get a little more insight about this situation. Question one would be, would you describe this guy as happy? And
I'm going to say yes, but I honestly haven't spoken to him in a long time.
Right. But I mean, like when you knew him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because absolutely. After we broke up, within 6 months, he was engaged to a woman who wanted exactly what he wanted. She was a nurse, and then they got married, had kids, moved where he wanted to move, and every time somebody would tell me about them or whatever, yeah, they were super happy.
Okay.
I can't speak for now though. That I
Right, right, right. Understood. Interesting. No, it sounds like it sounds very rigid, but I mean, I suppose if you create a plan and you're following it to the T, then shouldn't there could be, I mean, there shouldn't really be any reason to be unhappy. If you've created a plan step by step and you're following it step by step, there is doesn't seem to be a reason to be completely unhappy. That's interesting.
there's pros and cons on either side, right? Because having
Right.
a very stable career gives you so much freedom and flexibility in the rest of your life.
Hmm.
You know, especially if you wanted to get married and have kids by a certain point, it gives you that freedom and that flexibility. When you're following something that's not as stable, you have to think about all that. You have to think about how, you know, like my income comes in through, first of all, several sources and not inconsistent time frames. So there's not much stability there. So for me to think about having a family or going on vacation or having the same kind of flexibility as other people, who do have those stable careers, it's just not the same. But what I experienced when I did work that one full year in physical therapy, where I had that good income, I had that stability, I hadn't started doing music yet. You know, I could go on any vacation I wanted. I could go out for brunch with my friends. I could go out for dinners and bars and this and that. Like I had all the free time. I just didn't want it. I didn't want it. It was just not where my heart was. So I don't know that it's necessarily about the career itself or the path itself. It's about what you're meant for or what your calling is. And some people can have that stable career and find their calling through their free time and their extracurriculars. But for some people, it's just, no, this is really where I need to spend most of my time. And then the rest of it I can do in the other time.
Got it. Got it. And so I'm curious, when you decided to make the decision to pursue music, because I mean, you said it's South Asian, correct? Okay, so how did your parents take that message, knowing that they've brought you up through this this curtailed path here, and then all of a sudden, our successful, talented daughter wants to do something completely different?
Yeah, they weren't pleased. Um, they didn't get it. And I honestly think to an extent, a lot of my family still doesn't get it. I think a lot of my friends, even that I grew up with, don't get it. I think a lot of people don't get it, and that's okay. It's hard when people around you don't get it, and I think that's why I love being in LA so much, is because I'm surrounded by more people here that get it than don't. Whereas home, it was the opposite. I was surrounded more by people that don't get it than do. And when you're already battling so much, um, trying to motivate yourself through the lack of support or even some pushback just becomes exponentially harder, you know? And I think if you really want to accomplish something, you have to put yourself in an environment that's conducive to that. So that being said, I have been lucky that there's been a handful of people here and there that whenever I start to get demotivated or discouraged, somehow, some way, somebody shows up to keep pushing me. And at, you know, however many years later that I've been doing this and sacrificed all of that, you know, I do sit back sometimes and I'm like, maybe they were right. Maybe I should have just gone this route and done this and gotten married and had kids and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying nothing that's ever going to happen or I don't still want it, because I do. But okay, I keep going on tangents. To answer your question, they were not pleased, but they tried and have tried to be as supportive as possible.
Interesting. And I mean, that I imagine that that'd be kind of hard, because I that kind of resonates with me. You know, when you choose to make decisions or you have a certain idea that people just don't quite understand, it can, you know, and they're people that you care about, they're people close to you, and it can be somewhat frustrating.
Mhm.
So how do you manage that frustration?
Good question. And I want to preface this by saying that I think had I been, I think a lot of this journey has been one of self-discovery. So I can't say that I've always been so super clear to people around me as to why I'm doing what I'm doing so that they get it. Maybe just clear enough for that not to be like, no, you can't. And that being said, like I only really started pursuing this after I graduated with a master's degree and was making my own money. So I was no longer dependent on anybody, at which point, you know, I remember having a pretty big fight with my sister because she's like, Farah, you have so much talent and ability to heal people. Why would you throw that away for music? And like I said, I didn't really explain myself too well. And finally my brother piped in and was like, listen, she's done everything she was supposed to do. She's making her own money. She lives on her own now. Let's just let her do what she wants to do. So I just want to preface that. Now, how do I deal with the frustration? I write. I think songwriting, or just writing in general, has been more than therapy. It's been healing. It's been self-discovery. I do a lot of spiritual energy research. So, you know, I've listened to a ton of books or read a ton of books, Deepak Chopra, Louise Hay, you know, Oprah, Wayne Dyer, Abraham Hicks. And it's funny how that path got started, but it was just one after another, where it just became so apparent that I had to follow my calling and my intuition, and that it was okay to do that despite not having the support or despite what other people said, that there's no right answer, that there's nowhere to get, that the success is in the journey. And then there's, and I kept, every time I would come down, I kept asking myself, like, okay, if I'm not meant to be doing this, because that happens a lot with me. It's like, things don't go so super well and smoothly that I'm like, oh, this is totally the path I'm meant to be on. Like, there's just no question about it. It hasn't happened like that. So at so many junctures, I've been like, am I really meant to be doing this? Or am I trying to fit a round peg in a square hole? But then, like I said, something will happen or somebody will come up and it'll just take me this much further. And I'm like, okay, let me just follow the breadcrumbs, I guess, and hope that it leads somewhere. And I have to keep asking myself, it's like, if I'm not meant to be doing this, why is it this all-consuming, pervasive vision that I have? And I just put myself, one thing I'm good at is I can put myself in, and this happened when I was after that med school interview, actually, when I was trying to make this decision. I imagined myself 40 years from that point as a physician, you know, having my life exactly as I envisioned it, husband, kids, all that, medical degree. I wanted to do pediatric neurology because I just loved it. And I envisioned myself, and I could see and feel that future version of me as miserable. So there was that. So there's that I keep remembering. Then there's the year that I spent doing PT, making a ton of money, having that freedom, hanging out with my friends, whatever, living in Toronto by myself. And I was miserable. So I have that memory to keep me on track. And then there's just, every time I think of stopping, I feel so disappointed and so guilty, because I feel like all these messages come through me, all these ideas are coming through me for a reason. So I can't let the frustration or the defeatist mentality or ego or circumstance or comparison put me back. So I write, I talk to friends that are supportive, I cry, I read books, I listen to a ton of inspirational YouTube videos, and I just keep trying to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, I think that's key. Yeah. Giving yourself permission to go through all of those emotions, giving yourself permission to have those emotions and say it's okay. And the other thing is I think it's really common that a number of people go through a large portion of their lives doing what they're supposed to do. And it's like, at what point do you allow yourself permission to do what you want to do? Because what you want to do is not necessarily in alignment with what your close family and friends want. So it's like, how long does it take to stop doing what you're supposed to do and do what you want to do? And that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in our generation, right? Or I'll speak for myself, but like when your parents have immigrated and just want you, they worked so hard to give you a better life. And, the notion of you not necessarily having taken advantage of that. I remember somebody saying to me once, Farah, we've given you everything and you have nothing to show for it. And it was the most heartbreaking thing that I've ever heard, because on one hand, it was true. Aside from having a degree or 2 degrees, all the things that people expect you to have, I didn't have. And one by one, my friends were starting to have that and piece their lives together. And there's that, and there's that emotion with that. But then I have a coach now, and he asks me, what is it that you want to be doing? Or what are you proud of yourself for? And I can say, if my goal was to extract every single drop of life that I can for however long I am on this earth, because that could be over tomorrow, that could be over in 5 minutes from now, we don't know. And so I keep trying to just reconnect to my soul mission, or like why we're here in the first place. And I believe that it is to just extract as much from life as possible, and that looks different for everybody. And I think for those that don't always do what they're supposed to do, but do what they want to do, it may not look like you're doing the right thing from a societal standard aspect, but maybe from a spiritual aspect, it's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Does that make any sense? I don't know if I'm being a little too abstract.
No, it does make
or
sense.
Scattered.
Yeah, no, it does makes a lot of sense. And I think it's really cool that you, in a sense, you were able to sit there and visualize what your life would look like if you took the path, the medical path, and say that, well, and you know within yourself that you have the capability to do it. You're like, yes, I can do this, I can do this, I can do X, Y, and Z, and have all of this, and I'm going to be unhappy. So how do you, because that's a very powerful tool to do, to not only to think about something that you want, but know that you have the capacity to execute. So how do you distinguish between happiness and contentment?
It's a really good question. And I love that question, because I think I've only really discovered the answer to that in the last couple of years. The difference between happiness and contentment. Contentment to me is a sense of peace and faith that everything is unfolding as it should, as it should be. And to an extent, you're willing to, you've come to a point where you stop fighting life. You surrender and you start flowing with life, right? Flowing instead of fighting. And you sit in that contentment, like you ride the waves, and you're like, sometimes things are going to happen that don't make me very happy, or sometimes there's going to be circumstances that are not that happy, but I know that they're happening for a reason. I know that my soul is on a journey, and these are things that are part of that journey. So that for me is the contentment. And then happiness is the emotion. Happiness is when you're in love, or when you get an award, or whatever it is, like what for me, when I walk in the sunshine, or I look at a pretty flower, because I'm pretty easy to please sometimes. So it's distinct, but like, people die. I've had a lot of people around me die in the past few years. And those were not happy moments. Like, I can't say that I'm always happy, or that I'm going to strive that my life is something that's always happy, but I am going to strive that I'm always content, that I trust, that I have a certain amount of trust and faith and surrender. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, because I think that's crucial to just grounding yourself and being able to take larger, stronger steps in the direction that you choose, is kind of accepting things as they are. It may not be how we want it, but knowing that, it's okay. Eventually getting, because, and that can be a hard thing to do, especially if you have people around you that are not feeling well, not doing well, or even dying. So I'm also curious. So you grew up in Toronto, Canada, and
I grew up in
you,
Ottawa, actually.
excuse me, Ottawa. Ottawa is
I lived in Toronto for a long time.
lived in Toronto. Ottawa is in the northwestern part of
Ottawa
the.
is like right above, almost right above New York.
Oh, okay. I'm on the wrong
So
side
it's
of
on the
the.
border of Ontario and Quebec. It's just a 4-hour drive east of
Okay.
Toronto. And then I went to school right in between. So I went from Ottawa, which is actually our capital city for any Americans watching that don't know what Ottawa is. It's our Washington, D.C. And then if you drive 2 hours west, southwest, there's Kingston, which is where Queen's University is. And then you drive another 2.5 hours west, 2 hours ish, and you'll hit Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So am I, and if I think I heard it correctly, you felt that the people in Los Angeles more or less get it. They understand what you're trying to do, and you get something from, let's say, the community of Los Angeles that you didn't necessarily get from the community of Ottawa and or Toronto.
Yeah, or let's say Toronto, yeah, because
Okay,
most of
I
my
got it.
professional life was Toronto. So in that way,
Okay.
yes. And yes, I also spent some time in New York, not nearly as much time as I spent here in LA. And the thing I love about LA is that there's a balance. There is weather, right? And that I think that makes people more inclined to be a little more outdoorsy and a little more balanced. And there's this spiritual vibe here that people really believe in and don't ridicule necessarily. Like it's not weird for me to walk around and for somebody to ask me a question and be like, yeah, I'm an empath and I follow my intuition and I have a guardian angel. Like people don't really look at me. Some people do, but most of the time people are like, okay, I get it. I've heard that before. Like this is just the environment and the community that gets that. And people are on their hustle for sure. Like it's one of the best music hubs in the world. And people are willing to work at it. So nobody really looks at you funny when they're like, you sacrificed this, 6-figure salary and this whole life and family and all that to do music. Like nobody looks at me like that here. Well, almost nobody. And at the same time, a lot of them do it all. They have families and they have their creative careers and they are well balanced. And so I think that in Toronto, at least people I was around, like I think everybody has a different experience based on who they're around, right? Like who their circle is and who their environment, what their environment is. Toronto for me was like a mini New York. Like it was work, 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 work. The lifestyle is just so work heavy, so career heavy. And same with New York. It was just so career heavy, team no sleep, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's not healthy. That's not what I want to live. If at the end of the day, if my purpose is if success is in the journey, that means I need to be healthy and happy in what I'm doing. I can't just not sleep or take care of myself until I get a Grammy. For me, then you've just like, what have you done? What if you never get that Grammy and you've just wasted your health and your life, like trying to achieve something and you get hit by a bus or something? I don't know. But yeah, I feel like here people get it. People are willing to be more balanced. People are more balanced. There's definitely more spiritual energy here and understanding here. And then for me, being by the ocean and in the sun all the time is very, very healthy and healing. That's what
Okay.
helps with the frustration too, is honestly just like running down to the beach or biking
Oh
down
yeah.
and lying in the sun. That's very, very healing. Or meditating by the water. I just kind of imagine the ocean waves going over me and flushing away any negativity, any doubts, any toxicity.
Yeah, there is that about the beach. There's just something about large, large bodies of water, especially the ocean and having the sand right there that's just really
Very cleansing.
cleansing and natural and relaxing, where you can just kind of let everything go and you realize, because the ocean is just so vast, and you realize, yeah, if the ocean wants to, it can take whatever it wants when it wants, and you're not that important. And these things that you're putting value into, they really maybe don't matter quite as much as we like to think they do.
Yeah.
On a slight tangent there, if I find it interesting, because that's a new perspective for me about the similarities, I guess, between Toronto and New York. You say both cities have this mentality of work, 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 work. I definitely see that in New York, but every Canadian I've come across, even when I visited Toronto, it seems really happy-go-lucky, really
Yeah.
friendly, really
Yeah.
open.
Yeah. And I mean, just naturally, Canadians tend to be happier because there's just so much more diversity. There's less overt social toxicity. Let me call it that. I'm not going to say it's not there, but it's less overt, right? Um,
Social toxicity.
I know I just made that
That
up,
was
but
good. I like it.
yeah, I'm getting downloading. Um, maybe that should be one of the Firefly TV episode topics, social toxicity.
Social toxicity. Yes, definitely.
um, so yeah, that's why it's like a baby New York. It's not as much of a concrete jungle as New York, but it is. And I lived in downtown for most of the time. Um, and I had friends that were in the corporate world, and I had friends that were in obviously the rehab world, and then friends in the creative world. And so obviously it depends on where you are, but yeah, it's not like LA. Like LA here, I'm in the yoga world, I'm in a bit of the rehab world, and I'm in the music arts world. And I find the majority of people in all the worlds that I'm exposed to have that balance or prioritize health and spirituality of some sort, and balance it out with their careers.
Okay, got it. And to kind of circle back for a few comments ago, you said that you're an empath, and I kind of want to know what being an empath means to you, because I definitely know people who identify as empaths. I don't really understand it to the degree that they probably do, probably because I don't necessarily feel the need to interrogate on it, for one. And the other thing that you said was, oh yeah, at what point did you realize that you could trust your intuition? So I want to know like what an empath means, and then at what point did you decide, no, I got to start trusting my gut rather than going with what I'm supposed to do or the logical route?
Yeah, good, very good questions. I don't think I fully understand what it means to be an empath, and I didn't even know what that was. I just knew that I felt things more than anybody else around me, and to quite a significant degree. Um, Things growing up that would break me, like emotionally, are barely a blip on my brother and sister's radar. Um, the way people speak to me or the things that they say to me sit so much deeper in me than, whereas a lot of other people can just like have it go in one ear and out the other, but for me it just kind of it stays, like the emotion of everything stays. I tear up at the national anthem anywhere. It could be in a totally different language, but I see people just like being super patriotic, and there's this like chorus, and I just start to tear up. Um, Movies, TV shows, like I feel like a lot of my life I'm just trying not to cry for happy things and sad things. Like, I'm just always so overwhelmed with emotion. Um, I noticed it a lot when I was treating patients as a physical therapist. It's kind of it's a pro and a con, right? Because on one hand, you are more sensitive to them as a whole, not just their broken ankle or their broken foot. You see them and their lives, and I was the one that was asking more about, okay, what's your stress levels like? What's your relationship with your kids like? What's happening in your life? And looking them as in a more holistic kind of way to heal them. And I thought everybody was like that. Honestly, for the longest time, I thought everybody was like me. I thought I had no idea what racism was. I not that I didn't know, but I didn't get it. I was like, it doesn't make sense. And to this day, I keep defaulting to people having brains like mine, where that just doesn't make sense. And then, and a lot of my circle, obviously it doesn't make sense to them either, but then they're explaining to me, especially as I've been in America, they're explaining to me like, no, people are like people our age are outwardly racist or outwardly unjust. And I'm like, what? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. And then, I had to stop watching the news long time ago because it was too painful. It was just too painful. People around me have to know that they have to be a little bit careful as to what they say to me in terms of explaining to me like world situations, things like that, because it's too painful. And I'm not an energy master yet, where I'm not proficient in building the walls to protect me. if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I just know that I'm extra highly sensitive. Now, I think different empaths, like different people that are empaths, experience it very differently. But these are kind of some common things that I've heard from people that also have that kind of this highly sensitive, highly emotional, crying at, you know, happy and sad things, or just, you know, constantly fighting back tears or an overwhelmment of emotion. Being able to sense an energy when you walk in a room, or like just you're kind of hyper focused on people, and it's hard not to be. So I can go in a room and I can kind of get a sense of where people are emotionally, not always, but more often than not. And and sometimes it causes me to read a little too deeply into somebody's emotions, where they might not even know why they're feeling something, or that they feel something in that moment, but they are, and I kind of feel it first, you know. I don't know. That's the answer to your first question. To the second question, I don't know that I fully trust my intuition now. And that's kind of been a query of mine over the last year or so in a couple of courses that I've taken. And I think the answer that I've come across so far is that you don't always have to trust your intuition, or like not everybody gets to a point where you can fully trust your intuition, or you can trust it in certain areas and you don't trust it in certain areas. And it's really a game of trial and error. The course that I took, it's called Duality. And he was talking about intuition, and a lot of the questions were like, how do I know I can trust it? How do I know I can trust it? And his answer was like, well, you may not know. You just ask and you see what comes to you. Like you ask for guidance, you see what comes to you. Like you might see signs, you might fabricate some signs because of subconscious programming, or some signs might come to you. And it's really just trial and error. He's like, you just keep taking baby steps, just keep testing it, keep testing it, keep testing it. And then eventually you'll start to see a pattern. So for me, I was going to say my intuition is very strong but again, I don't even know that that's true. I think life just okay, let me put it this way. When I let go and when I stop trying to push and force life, and I just allow things to come to me, it happens in a way that it kind of makes it clear, you know. Or if I'm being really stubborn about something that maybe I should have sensed intuitively, life has a way of coming and just shutting it down and being like, no, you're no longer going in that direction. Either it's because you're not listening, so I'm going to shut it down for you, or you've gotten what you needed to get out of this scenario, and now it's time to push you in another direction. So maybe I can liken it to if you get lost in the ocean, it's the difference between riding the waves and fighting the waves.
That is a good analogy. And to maybe help clarify it for me, because I really like that analogy. So what does riding the waves rather than fighting them typically look like in a everyday situation?
Okay.
Without letting that wave pull you under, obviously.
Yeah, and I'm not even going to say that either one scenario is the best way to go, because there might be times where you have to fight. I don't know. I think the ideal spiritual answer is that you just go with the flow and trust where it takes you is where you're supposed to be. But so an everyday situation, let's say in a relationship, right? Let's say something happens, like you have a bad feeling for a little while, or not such a comfortable feeling for a little while, and there's anxiety sitting in you, or there's doubt sitting in you, and I'm the kind of person that's like, half of my brain is like, you're self-sabotaging and you're creating things to be anxious about, and half of my brain is like, no, you should listen to this because it's your intuition. And then the other half goes back and be like, no, that's not your intuition. You're just it's a big mess. But eventually, you go along and you're like, hey, let's just see what happens. ask my spirit guide, hey, can you figure this out for me? And boom, something happens where there's a breakup. Now, riding the wave would look like just trusting that, going through the emotions and letting it go. To whatever extent makes sense. Whereas fighting the waves might be going against all your gut feelings or intuitions and being like, no, I have to get that person back. I have to get that, like succumbing to all the psychological factors that are counter to what life has just shown you. Does that make sense?
Sort of.
Sort of, okay. I can get pretty abstract. Let me think of another example.
Yeah, can you explain it a different way? Because I think I'm like almost there. I'm like 50% there. I just need something else to kind of put the pieces together.
And maybe it's because I don't fully have a fully developed, clear answer anyway. It really could be that. But okay. So there's this one meditation I used to listen to, Louise Hay. It's her morning meditation on YouTube. And she says, you can plan your day from start to finish. You can plan it so it's like perfect timetable, but you don't know what life's going to throw at you. So to an extent, you always have to be able to just go with the flow, because just because you have something planned doesn't mean you have full control over everything. So riding the wave would mean like, okay, you have your plan for the day and you go through your agenda, you know, step by step, you're riding it. But when something comes to shove the wave another way, you go with it.
Yep.
Does that make more sense?
Yep. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And that's a struggle. Like that's really difficult, especially for somebody like me. Like I'll plan out my whole day and a certain amount of productivity I'm going to have, and then something will happen and it'll derail me. I'll get so frustrated sometimes. But I have to remind myself that I'm living life. Life's not living me. Or maybe that didn't make sense.
Yep, that makes sense.
I think you get the point. Is I'm supposed to be here going with the flow of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And I have to just keep reminding myself that you never know where that detour is going to take you. Even if it leads to your day being 25% less productive as you had planned, maybe it leads to like whatever it is you've been looking for, and eventually will make you more efficient or give you the answers you've been looking for a while.
That makes sense. So I want to shift gears here, and I really want to try and understand what Firefly Nation is.
Firefly World.
Okay. Sorry, Firefly World. My apologies.
Okay. Speaking of all my fireflies, hello to everybody that's still on and that has joined. Thank you for coming into the background of this conversation. Okay, so for starters, a firefly is somebody at the most basic level. This is what I'm envisioning and creating. Again, it's still in the process, so there's a lot of back and forth, and it's not like one super clear linear direction just yet, but it's getting there. I wanted to create something, like the whole point of doing music was to create a platform to whom to share all these messages that were coming to me. So like I would sit down and write, and I wrote 7 principles. And it used to be called GPOP, the Global Pursuit of Positivity. That was the first name for it. And then it evolved into this whole firefly thing. So how it looks now, a firefly is somebody who shines as the brightest version of themselves, who has that intention. And then a firefly is somebody who recognizes that if we were to turn off all the lights in the world, you wouldn't see race, gender, color, religion, socioeconomic status, or sexual preference. All you would see is the light in the other person, which is the same light in you. So that's just a longer way of saying that a firefly is somebody who recognizes that underneath it all, we're the same. And then 3, a firefly is someone who understands that in order to shine brighter, you help others shine brighter. So basically, the kind of people that would be interested in what I'm doing in this brand, in this community, are people who want to be the best versions of themselves, that believe that underneath it all, we're all equal and deserve the same respect, and to be treated equally. And that we're all here to help each other, and that helps our light shine brighter, is when we help other people. So that's kind of like the basis of it. And then there are 7 principles on like living a firefly lifestyle. One is I love me unconditionally. And I've always, like, I made that number one because I feel like the root cause of, and when I say I feel, I mean, like, I started writing and this was all coming through me. And then somehow it just settled into my brain. So the one of the root causes for, let's say, the social toxicity or global toxicity is rooted in a lack of self-love, lack of self-awareness, lack of self-love, lack of connection to oneself. So that's why that's the first principle, is I love me unconditionally. And then there's, like, the whole, that's its own realm. And then principle number two is the purpose in life is to use your talents and abilities for the betterment of humanity. Number three is embracing diversity versus just accepting or tolerating, because when I was growing up, it was more around first tolerating diversity and then moving, like that was the verbiage that was used. And then it went to accepting, and I was like, that's not good enough. It's about embracing diversity. Yes, underneath we're all the same, but on top we're not. And that's such a beautiful thing. So really embracing it and being curious, right? Number four was blurring the boundaries of artistic expression. Number five, maintaining a balance between physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental health. Number six, cooperation versus competition. And number seven, the Firefly bubble, or the positivity bubble. So those are the 7 principles of how to live a Firefly lifestyle, say. And what I'm envisioning is Firefly World will be an umbrella brand that encompasses many different aspects. So I see there being like a record label that promotes like positive music, or music that is conducive to any of these principles, any or all of these principles. I see it there's being like the publishing. So I plan on writing books and journals and stuff like that, like perform or Firefly Diaries or whatever. And then there's so many different aspects of it that I see developing over time. Eventually there being an app. So the Firefly World is basically the umbrella brand, the umbrella company for all these different aspects that will find their way into this whole vision. Yeah. So that's the vision. Where we're at right now is I'm just kind of, I forced myself to start the Firefly TV episodes because it's been something I've been wanting to do forever. I just couldn't figure out how to blend me as an artist and me as this social entrepreneur. And I had to stop trying to get it perfect and just start somewhere. So I started the Firefly TV episodes, and then now I've worked with somebody on a logo and bought the domains, and so it really is starting to put the pieces together a little slower than I would have wanted, but it's coming.
No, that's awesome. That's definitely awesome, because again, taking that first step is like the hardest step. I know a number of people and they have these elaborate plans that they've been working on for years, but have yet to put one foot in front of the other, even for the first step.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, it took its different, it's gone through various forms. Cause like I said, first it was G-pop, and I did public speaking around some of these concepts. So it was always like a brand that was adjacent to my music career, but my music career was number one. So even in Toronto, when I was working with a manager, like we were heavily pushing this whole positivity movement along with me as an artist. That was part of my brand. So I got several shows because of that. For example, I performed at Washington Pride 1 year because of that. Because of this whole G-pop thing, and like interviews that I would get, or public speaking opportunities that I would get at, like for a high school, or even for an adults group, or for these young girls. So it's always been there, but it's taken me a long time to really envision and get clearer on what I want and how I want to do it. And I'm still not necessarily there, but like you said, taking that first step is like, okay, just do it. If it's not perfect, it's not perfect. You'll just keep figuring it out along the way.
Yeah, you get more information that way. At least it gives you a better second step, perhaps.
Yeah.
And that's everything you're describing sounds exactly like what the world needs right now, because there is so much social global toxicity.
Isn't that so great?
It works.
I won't even take credit for it. Like all these brilliant things that come out of me, like I won't even take credit for them because it's not me.
I'll give it to you. That I didn't come up with it. That
No, it came through.
Okay. It came
And
through.
that's, you know, and again, that's when you can embrace I had to, going back to this whole empath thing, people used to tell me that I'm too sensitive. For example, like my former manager used to say, you're too sensitive. You have to fix that about yourself. And I tried. But how do you fix that about yourself? It really took me accepting that about myself, and understanding the pros and cons and where it's useful and where it's not useful versus trying to fix it. But one of the pros is when you accept it, you open yourself up to having that relationship with the universe. And you don't necessarily need to see the tangible or have everything be logical and rational to understand it. So
Yeah.
that's where I can say it's an advantage, because it allows these things to come through me and be like, oh, well, thanks.
Right.
So I needed to hear that. So that's why I'm saying it. That's
No,
why I
that
love
makes a lot of
interviews,
sense.
because you ask me questions that I may never have thought of, and then things will come out of me that I'm like, oh, cool.
This is not an interview, Farah. This is a discussion between two souls. That's all this is.
Same thing. Well, no, not same thing, but yeah, that's why I enjoy these Q&A type discussions.
But yeah, everything you said resonates. I had a buddy, and I think he was reading a book by Jay Shetty, Think Like a Monk. And he said something in there that I had never really heard before. It's like you kind of embrace your weaknesses because you have your weaknesses so other people's strengths can shine. And I was like, oh, that's actually a perfect way to look at it. It's like, why should I be building up my weaknesses when somebody else is just naturally better at this?
Yeah.
I need to give whoever that is space to shine. And that actually makes a lot of sense. And so on that same note, with you being an empath, what areas would you say what areas has being an empath been not so beneficial for you?
Well, being extra sensitive to everything. It's kind of a pain in the butt to try and fight back tears all the time, you know, when recalling not so pleasant memories, or, you know, or singing songs on stage when there's, especially some that I've written that are very personal and very emotional. Trying to sing when you're trying to not cry is really hard. You sound awful. So that's one place where it's not beneficial. Being able to compartmentalize is way more beneficial in those senses. It can definitely lead to reading too much into situations, overthinking, overfeeling. I would imagine that some people that are much more experienced and know how to deal with all of that better can learn how to not be so affected by it. But like, let's say you're in a room with a lot of different energies going around, including your own, it can be really overwhelming and confusing and exhausting. So you have a higher susceptibility to emotional fatigue, which you don't always understand why. So you might just get hit with this like need to recharge or refuel, and you don't even know why, because it wasn't anything necessarily that you did, but you're absorbing things at a much higher rate than a lot of people around you. And then it's harder to focus because you get pulled in so many different directions, because that person needs you and that person, or like, and this may not even be like a tangible discussion like I need you. It just, their energy is pulling yours and somebody else's energy is pulling yours, and your energy just gets pulled in many different directions. So it's harder to focus, and it can be depleting. So it requires much more discipline and renewal and recharge. And then it's just simple things like in everyday relationships, like I'm just way more sensitive to things people say. You know, I'll notice you could say the same thing to somebody, could say the same thing to me and you, and I'm sure you'd be like, huh, and I could be because my brain is like almost equally logical and equally emotional. There's this constant battle going on, because like I'll be like, you hurt my feelings, and then my brain's like, shut up, it wasn't even serious, you know. And there's this back and forth, like, yeah, but let yourself experience the emotion. Okay, fine, but don't stay in the negativity too long. Okay, but you know, it's, you know, that. I think I'm just a display of the pros and cons all in one go.
No, I'm starting to understand that more. I think I'm getting a little more sensitive as I get older. I was watching I don't watch a lot of TV or movies, but I was watching The Truman Show a few weeks ago, and I felt a teardrop at the end of the movie when he's exiting the stage. I was like, what is this tear? Let me go do some push-ups real quick. Or this is some nonsense. And I'm sitting there by myself. I was like, this is ridiculous. Anyways, so on that note, because what you're describing, I feel like that you say that emotional drainage, it's not something that I ever really get, but I do hear a lot of introverts talk about like being emotionally drained. So would you classify yourself as an introvert or not so much?
No, I think what they call an ambivert, or introverted extrovert, which I didn't know. Again, I didn't know existed. Growing up, I thought I was an extrovert because I had lots of acquaintances and I loved people and I loved participating in things, as opposed to like my brother, for example, who had a very small, closer group of friends, didn't like to participate in everything, only a few specific things. Whereas my mom will tell you that like, she was like, hey, you want to take dance classes? I'm like, sure. Hey, you want to do this? Sure. Hey, you want to go this? Sure. Like, I was just like, let me jump into everything. And I knew everybody and everybody knew me. And so I always thought I was an extrovert. And then as I was in a mastermind with a bunch of creatives, the leader was talking about an introverted extrovert. And I was like, ooh, that sounds much more like me. Or I think it's also known as an ambivert. And so I love people. I love people and I love being around the energy of people, which is why I would go crazy living in a suburb, I think, or in like a remote ranch where there isn't energy of people. I think I would go insane. So I like living in downtown or downtown adjacent type areas because there's people around, there's energy around, but I don't have to talk to all of them. You know what I mean? And so much of what I do, whether I'm treating and healing people, or I'm teaching yoga, or I'm performing, or I'm networking, or I'm in songwriting sessions, like so much of what I do is around people and people's energy that my renewal stuff, like I don't get renewed necessarily from that energy. I need it, but it's not renewing for me. It's not re-energizing for me. I need to go to the beach by myself, or go for a run, or meditate, or just get lost in a TV show, usually by myself. So it's a little frustrating for people around me who are like, Farah, you never have time to hang out. And I'm like, I'm like, if we could just hang out and not talk, that might work. Or like one-on-one situations might work where there's like, it's very low pressure. Because like I said, most of my time gets spent into all those. And on top of that, trying to build a brand. There's just so much that goes into that. But I identify with both. Like extroverts definitely get their energy from other people. I know I don't get my energy from other people, as much as it might look like that sometimes. I can definitely understand how introverts need to be alone to rejuvenate. So I have both sides.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's so rare when you can find someone, whether that be a friend or a significant other, but where you can find someone who is just happy to share space with you. Nobody has to talk to each other. There doesn't have to be this constant engagement, but where you're just happy to be sharing the same room with someone else. That's a really special feeling.
Yeah.
And you also said you put a lot of energy. I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but you get a lot of your emotions and your feelings out when you're writing, and you sing a lot of these songs, and they stir up these emotions for you. And I think that's the sign of when you have a really good artist. I think that the audience can subconsciously connect with the artist when they feel that, when they can see that there is an actual connection between the song and the artist. For anyone who's listening, is there a specific song that you would like them to listen to as an introduction to your music?
So from what's out right now, yeah, I would say Choosing Hope is it's the song that I put out on New Year's Day this year. It's a theme song I wrote for this woman in Toronto who battled 3 aggressive advanced stages of cancer. But it's a really special song. It's one of those songs that I barely tried to write. Like, it just came through me. And so out of things that are released, I would say that one. Out of songs that are going to be released, Shine is going to be like my theme song. Whenever I finish it, whenever it gets done, I sing it at the end of every single show I do. Almost every single, like 99% of the shows I do, it's the last song. I explain the whole thing about fireflies and why I wrote the song and how we're so blessed to have this vast palette of emotions. I just sang it, a couple hours ago. And I think by the end of the show, then people know me when they hear the story about why I wrote that song, and then they hear the lyrics. So Shine coming up. There's a song I wrote called Beautiful Mess that also needs to be finished. And so a lot of my songs are autobiographical to some extent, and then I might, the love songs or the breakup songs, they might get embellished in some way or merging stories. But songs like Shine, like Beautiful Mess, like Choosing Hope. There's some other ones in there that are really more personal. And if you want to know me, those lyrics will kind of be like, yeah, this is who I am. Like, I'm really not trying to hide anything. The one that I did cry when I was on stage, because like my former manager actually passed away from cancer at the top of 2019. And he wasn't the only one. Like, we had another family member pass away, and a friend of mine passed away later that year. And it was just a lot of death. And so I wrote a song called Letting You Go. And the first time I performed that, I was just, I couldn't make it through the whole song. So yeah, there's a lot coming out. I need to put out more music. I need to get things done and put them out so that I can keep giving the audience ways to get to know me.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm Choosing Hope.
Yeah, that and I think we discussed this during when I came on your show last weekend about there's just so much power in transparency and vulnerability. Are some of these selections available on like Spotify or Apple? Where can we, or YouTube? Where can we find them?
Choosing Hope is out everywhere.
Okay.
I need to put out the acoustic video of it. I haven't done that yet. Eventually I'd like to shoot a video for it, but no, Shine and Beautiful Mess, Letting You Go, they're not done yet. They're still in the vault. I perform them. But yeah, they're not out yet. It'll be.
Okay. All right. Well, that's exciting. I'm excited to go listen to some more of your music now that I have a bit of context for it. And I really want to thank you for joining us today, and for everybody listening. I hope you, oh yeah. How do people become fireflies? How do people get into Firefly World?
Awesome. Thank you for saying that. Right now, I would just join my social media. So I am Farah Mitha, IAMFAREHMITHA.
Oh, Mitha. No, it's not tha, it's ta.
Mitha.
I've been saying it wrong this entire time. I apologize. Farah Mitha.
Okay. Don't worry.
Got it.
It is THA, so it's just not phonetic. It's like
Stupid Americans.
It's a Sanskrit kind of syllable. Yeah, so for now I'm working as fast and as hard as I can to launch the actual Firefly World brand, and the social media handle will be @This Is Firefly World. So you'll be able to search that, or I think the web domain is going to be fireflyworld.co. But for now, yeah, just join me, hop on my website, even the mailing list. I am farahmitha.com, or on my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that. Yeah, it's all coming together. Like I said, a little bit slower than I wanted it to, but it's coming together.
That's exciting.
Put all the pieces together and build the team that can help me do it, because it's a lot with all the side hustles that I have to do right now. So yeah, that's how they could find me. But Spotify, just search my name, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff, YouTube, Farah Mitha. You can see some videos and hear some music, and you might even come across a video or two that I forgot to hide. Interviews or whatever.
Oh, Easter eggs out there in your catalog.
Yeah, I'm doing this for a while, so.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining. That was so insightful. And for everybody listening, please go follow Farah Mitha, check out her music, check out the Firefly World, and we will see you next time. Thank you, Farah.
Thanks so much for having me on No More Nonversations. It's been so cool getting to know you and your thought patterns. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
All right.